Okay. Our kind and gracious Heavenly Father, as we begin this class today after our holiday break, we are indeed grateful to be together once again and to be able to study the French Revolution. We're so grateful for the opportunity we have to study it under these conditions and are grateful for the knowledge that has given to Mr. Gentile and his willingness to share it with us. May we have a edifying class today, and please know that we are so grateful for the many blessings that thou hast given us, and we say these things and ask for the Spirit to be with us this afternoon. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Well, thank you very much for that prayer, Heidi. I appreciate it, and I really do feel the need to have the Spirit today, of course, as always, but especially today as we discuss a very important document and one that I think there will be a lot to discuss about. First of all, I just wanted to point you to a couple things. So, of course, today we are 1-4. We're going to get right along with our Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen from 1789. And then a couple little changes just to see how they work out. For Wednesday, we'll read Olympe de Gouges, her Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen. This isn't a government document. This is her own creation that was published, and we'll talk about what it meant for France and why she wrote it. And then, to try to help you with your comprehension, I will post online a 5-question comprehension quiz that you can do if you'd like, if you think it would be helpful for you. You can find that in the view. And then, homework then, during your tutorial, if you have chosen to do so, will be the word study on passion. I know Walter will be doing that, and I look forward to reading his on Wednesday when I have his tutorial. Then Wednesday we'll discuss de Gouges and her Declaration of the Rights of Woman. Okay, then remember, because the administration gave me a call over the break and let me know about this change in the schedule that we all need to follow, and I do hope it didn't cause anybody any inconvenience. But we're going to switch to Tuesdays and Wednesdays from now on instead of Mondays and Wednesdays. And so once again, I do apologize for that. It wasn't my choice, but I know that we'll be able to do our very best to work with everybody to try to make sure we can still all meet together. The other thing is on this Tuesday, then we'll read 3 different documents. They're all very short, but they start talking about the Reign of Terror that was part of the French Revolution. We'll talk about what that meant for France. And then there'll be another reading comprehension quiz for those of you who would like to do it. And then, so then Tuesday on the 1/12, we'll discuss those 3 documents. Okay? Okay, so let's get started then. And once again, I do apologize for all of the delays and the technical glitches.
So the Olympia, the Declaration of the Rights of Women, we also read for tomorrow along with the other 3 pieces?
Oh, no. Actually, here, let me go back. Okay. So, if we, where's this? Okay. Right. So, yeah, de Gouges is for 1/6. When, let's see. Do you see this here? Wednesday, 1/6. That's this Wednesday. That'll be the discussion. And then, oh, I see. Let's see here. No, what did I do? Right. Okay. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand now. And
okay.
Are those quizzes, are they open book or closed book?
They're open book. Yeah. Yeah, and there'll be instructions with the quizzes as well, but yeah, they'll all be open book. It'll just be one way for you to understand how much of the document you understood if you got some of the main points and ideas and that sort of a thing. Nothing scary, just more to help you with your comprehension than anything else. Mr. Anderson recommended that I try that, so I was going to give it a whirl this next little while.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks for the question, Wendy. So yeah, this Wednesday we'll discuss Declaration of the Rights of Woman, and then on Tuesday when we meet again, we'll discuss those 3 documents about the Reign of Terror. Okie dokie. So, actually I have to get out of this highlighter tool. There we go. Now I can click on the slideshow. Okay. Well, did you all have a nice break?
Yes. I'm nodding my head. It seems.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Good. Well, okay. Let's start talking then. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have read this document before or heard of it? The Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen.
I've never heard of it.
Not me.
Okay. Well, good. Well, then hopefully there'll be lots of good learning going on today. It's a very influential document for better or worse, as we'll see. And certainly it has some good points. And so let's first start by asking ourselves this question about this artistic representation of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen. What do you see, and then what could it mean?
The broken shackles.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What else do you see?
An angel, but I have no idea what that means.
Right. And I'm happy, I think that was Heidi, right? I'm happy that you pointed that out because I think the French weren't quite sure what that angel meant either, in terms of an angel from where. So we'll see. If we had a better resolution on this picture, and I'm sorry that we don't, you would see here that there is, just like on the back of our dollar bill, I believe, we have the pyramid with the all-seeing eye. Sort of this notion of a sort of amorphous supreme being. To the French, many of them believed it was the goddess of reason. Others said, oh no, it can represent any god. But overlooking France, so of course that's kind of alarming in some ways. I would certainly add. What else do we see?
Now, when you say alarming, what do you mean by that? That they're saying it's the God of reason rather than the God of heaven?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
By this time, and that's a great clarifying question, Heidi. That by this time there are many forces in the French government that were saying, not only do we want a revolution that is social and cultural and political, but we want a revolution that will overturn religious beliefs in France and move to the Enlightenment ideal of reason ahead of faith. Let's just scrap religion in some ways, or let's just say, well, who needs organized religion? Every man for himself, and let's just use the faculties that the God of the universe gave us when he sort of wound up his creation, let it go flying into space, and then went to sleep. That's what many of these men believed if they were deists. If they were atheists, then that could just represent purely reason alone, because they believed in no divine authority or a means by which you could communicate with heaven and gain enlightenment through inspiration by perhaps the Holy Ghost, as we would say. So yeah, this is a very interesting symbol up here at the top of this declaration, as we'll find out as we talk about it. So thanks for pointing that out. What else do you notice? Of course, it is in French, but it just says the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen. It lists the preamble, and then it has each of the 17 articles from the representatives of the people of France. But I like how Wendy pointed out that there aren't any shackles. And so what do you think this means then for France?
It looks like the Ten Commandments. Kind of. Do you think in their way they're kind of trying to replace the Ten Commandments with this?
Well, I think that is a great connection to potential symbolism, Lori, and I appreciate that very much. And in fact, as we'll see, this document really was meant not just to be a code of laws, but it was meant to become a new foundation for a new French society, one founded on very different ideals. And of course, some of them will, I'm sure, decide are very good, and others are very, perhaps, precarious or scary. And so, yeah, there's definitely some symbolism there. Thanks for that. Anything else? These are some great reasoning and relating going on here.
Is that little red hat in the middle there? Is that the thing the revolutionaries wore?
Yes. Yep. Definitely. And if we notice here, and thanks for pointing that out with the great eye, Wendy. It is on top of a fasces, right? These sticks that are bound together, a symbol of power, but power in the people being bound together as what the French would call the nation. And as we see, there's a pike here, there's a spear, right? And so we have these people bound together. They're going to get what they want through liberty or chaos, whatever comes first, and force certainly as they need to. And then sort of the symbol of this new society they're trying to create with this revolutionary cockades, this new hat. Definitely. Well, excellent relating. Let's do a little bit more here. I'm sure you've heard of Lafayette, very famous for his participation in the American Revolution. As we'll learn, he was very influential on this Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen. In fact, he was, you could say, the primary author. Of course, there were others, as there are in great documents of the past. Many minds come together and influence each other, but he was the primary author. He prepared it, and then he presented it to the National Assembly on the 11th of July in 1789. And then after some debate, it was interesting because it was adopted on the 26th of August in the same year, but it would take a little while for it to be attached to a new constitution. And so it was sort of just this embodiment of ideals for a very long time. And then a couple years later, it's the preamble of the new constitution that the First Republic would end up using after the constitutional monarchy of France under Louis XVI before he was beheaded. So there's Lafayette for you. Okay, let's see here. Now I'm gonna give this a try. So if it all just humor me, I want to see if this works. Okay, because I've been discussing it with Mr. Anderson, and it should. And welcome to Brad and Christina and Walter certainly. Okay, I want to try using the chat feature of GoToMeeting. I want you to try using it to discuss with a partner, just one partner, the following questions. What is the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen? And then, is it most similar to the U.S. Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, or the Bill of Rights? The way you can do this is, if you go to the chat below the box where you type in the chat, you can click on one person. Okay, and so what I'd like to do is I would like, let's do Wendy and Heidi. Let's have Lori and Walter, and then, okay, Brad and Christina. So just send those chats back and forth by selecting only your partner. I'm going to try this. I hope it works. If it doesn't, we'll move on.
So we're just typing, we're not talking to each other, we're typing to each other?
That's right. That's right. So you can do it privately and do some brainstorming about these as you reason and relate together with your partner, and then we'll come back together as a class after a few minutes. I'll just ask you. I'll say, "Are you guys almost done?" And then we can share together. So I want to try this today. Okay. Any questions?
No, I'm busy typing.
Okay, go to it. Thanks so much. Okay, how much more time do you need?
It takes a while to type out your thoughts.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What was that?
I said it's a lot easier to say your thoughts than to try to type them. It's faster. It's faster to talk.
We can talk about the pros and cons of this in a minute. Is there anybody who would like more time? I'm sorry, I just can't see what you're doing, so I'm not sure.
No, we're good. You can go on.
Okay.
At least for me.
Okay, what about Lori and Walter?
We are just barely getting started here.
Okay. Okay. Let's take another minute then, get you some time to run a few things by each other, and then we'll come back as a class. We'll talk about the experience, and then we'll answer the questions together.
let's see. Mr. Gentile, I didn't do my homework.
Okay. Hi, Brad.
Where did the Declaration of the Rights of Man come from?
Well, we'll talk more about that. Actually, that's coming up in the next few slides. That's a great question. So if you could just hold on, we'll get to that. Okay. Well, wherever you are, just find a stopping point. Even if you're not done, that's okay. And first, did you think that was a useful way to work together in private, or would you rather just discuss things openly altogether?
I'd say openly, personally.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Although I do like Wendy's thoughts here, though. She can talk to me anytime she wants. But I think everybody would benefit from, we could type in things more often. I think everyone could benefit what she's saying. And then just have it go to one person. I don't know.
Let's have the group's report then. Tell us, what did you think about those two questions? I think they're fairly open-ended. What did you conclude with your partner?
Who are you asking?
Oh, anybody. Anybody who wants to jump in. We can start with your group, Heidi, if you'd like.
Well, okay. Wendy was saying that she thought the first part of it reminded her of the Declaration of Independence, but that the remaining part reminded her more of the Bill of Rights.
Okay, great.
And she pointed out that 7 through 9 address crime, 10 addresses religion, 11 addresses free speech, 17 addresses search and seizure. So.
Yeah, excellent. Well, good. Thank you for that. Okay, what about Lori and Walter? What did you think together as you put your heads together?
Well, one thing that we found interesting is in Article number 3, the principle of all sovereignty resides essentially in the nation. No body or individual may exercise any authority which does not directly proceed directly from the nation. Is that stating that that individual sovereignty is given to people by the nation rather than endowed by their creator?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great question. When the French said the nation, they were talking about the nation in the Enlightenment sense of the nation being the people. So really, sovereignty resided in the people, and the government couldn't take it away from the people.
Oh, okay.
Great question. And did you think it was most similar to the Declaration, the Constitution, or the Bill of Rights?
The Declaration. The Declaration.
You thought the Declaration, Walter?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much for that. And why did you pick that one?
Well, it kind of just states it's kind of, I don't know, it's just, they're both kind of declaring independence, and so, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for that. Well, I mean, that was certainly an interesting exercise for me. It gives me a lot to think about in terms of how to structure the class. Certainly doing group activities in class, I think, is much more effective than over the internet. But if we think about this here and try to start comparing and contrasting, though often thought of as a Bill of Rights for the French revolutionaries of 1789, the Declaration of the Rights of Man was actually much more. It was really intended to be much more, and has since become much more to the French and to many others in the world. And also, just an FYI, so you can understand the influence of one document on the other, or the lack thereof, the U.S. Bill of Rights was proposed on the 25th of September, 1789. And then it was ratified by 75% of the states, making it legally binding on the 15th of December, 1791. And so the finished Bill of Rights of our country certainly did not influence the August 26th document, but in the debates of our founders on a Bill of Rights, those debates made it back and forth across the Atlantic and did have some influence. Okay. Well, if we continue to compare and contrast them, because I think this is usually an important comparison, I think, to understand. Unlike the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen issued by the National Assembly, the American Bill of Rights of 1791 was less a creative document than a defensive one. It made no universal claims like the French Declaration did, but was rooted solely in the Americans' particular history. It did not invent human rights that had not existed before, like the French Declaration tried to do, but mainly reiterated long-standing English common law rights. Unlike the French Declaration, which transcended law and the institutions of government and in fact became the source of government and even society itself, the American Bill of Rights was simply part of the familiar English customary law that worked to limit pre-existing governmental power. To find an American version of the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen that asserted the natural, equal, and universal nature of human rights requires reaching back to the Declaration of Independence of 1776, and that's from Gordon Wood. And so it is interesting, and so I like how in your answers you talked about both the Bill of Rights as well as the Declaration, because certainly we can see similarities between both. But if you start to look at the sweeping nature of the claims made by the French Declaration, we see that it really goes very far beyond the Bill of Rights. Okie dokie. The Declaration in brief then, as has been partially stated so far, it's really important to remember that France had a king, and not just any king, but an absolute monarch, and a string of them who for years and years and years had basically ruled by arbitrary will. And so the first thing that this did that was so revolutionary was that it nullified the divine right of kings. As well, it enumerated universal, inalienable, you can't take them away, and natural rights for all men everywhere. So this document wasn't just supposed to be for France. It was supposed to be a statement of rights for the world, for every human, which is very interesting. And particularly, we'll see men, as the wording indicates. Okay, well, in terms of what did it give? The right to participation, either personally or through chosen representatives in lawmaking, and so this is the consent of the governed theory, equality of citizens before the law, a very interesting one, equitable taxation in proportion to means, kind of like tithing, everybody pays 10%, right to liberty, property, security, and resistance from oppression, freedom of religion, speech, and press, and then protection against arbitrary arrest and punishment, among other things. And so what I want to do now, as we look at this, is we're not going to use the chat feature. we're going to do this another way. But I want to chat with, just have a conversation together. What do you think, and this gets to Brad's question, because I told him we definitely would get to it, and so here it is. What are the origins of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen? Where do you think it comes from? Where does its ideas come from? And then, to help you with that, how does it relate to the Glorious Revolution, the American Revolution, and the French Enlightenment? So let's just chat together then, because especially for time and I also think efficiency. Let's just try talking together this time and see if we can be as fruitful as last time.
Well, the origins probably go back to England, like with Locke and even earlier.
Uh-huh. Yeah, excellent. And what do you see of Locke in this declaration, Wendy, or anyone else?
The idea of inalienable natural rights.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a question about why, because in our homework you asked the dangers of a document founded on secular natural law, and yet I was surprised to read that they talked about a supreme being in their preamble and the sacred rights of man.
That's right. Well, and it is very interesting because if you look at why that phrase was added, it was actually one that was to appease the Roman Catholic population that was by far the majority in France, because it was elusive. It could mean God, it could mean the goddess of reason, it could just mean a creator in general, whatever that is. It could mean, a spirit of life, that sort of a thing. And so really, they tried to be slippery in putting a supreme being there. And so that's why the delegates definitely wanted to make the common folk think that they could invoke God in these rights, but most of the representatives were very, very firmly entrenched in the Enlightenment thought that heralded reason over faith, and that really thought that God didn't have any place in natural rights.
And how do you know this? Was there some kind of debate? It wasn't in the original copy, and they added it back in after some debate, or what?
Yeah, just in different books that I've read about the debates over how to write this document, that's where I picked up that information.
Okay, interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, I know that, and that was a great question. Thanks so much for that,
I have a question
Wendy.
about that. Can I just clarify? Okay, so when I was reading that, same thing, the sacred rights of man and also the auspices of the Supreme Being, I thought they must mean God, but they definitely did not mean this king. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. I heard something of the king, but I couldn't hear you.
They definitely didn't mean Supreme Being as the king.
Right. Yeah. No. They meant something higher than themselves, whether that be a goddess of reason, if you will, or a spirit of life, or a creator, whatever that could be to them. So yeah, they were trying to be ambiguous with that wording, but yet write something that, with the capital letters, could also be shaped to fit the popular belief in God. Those who were faithful to the Roman Catholic Church. What else do we see? The American Revolution, the French Enlightenment.
Great. I just wasn't sure what that meant.
Oh yeah, no, that was a great question. Thanks so much for that, Heidi. What do we think? Any other influences?
Well, the question's asked about all the different people we've already read, Trenchard and Gordon, and all the people we've read in the past that were involved, especially in the Revolution.
Yeah,
So I'm
definitely.
imagining they probably read the same documents that those of...
And probably even going back like to the Magna Carta.
Definitely, right? This heritage of constitutional liberty, of limiting power through the consent of the governed, or at least trying to give people sovereignty in any way possible. And we see the expansion of that sovereignty through time. It's interesting because did any of you pick up on some of the phrasing, the very specific phrasing that actually came from some of the documents that we read? Did anybody find anything in any of those articles?
No.
For example, number 6.
Being equal in the eyes of the law?
Well, that's definitely a very important one, and thank you for that, Heidi. There's actually a 2-word phrase in article number 6 that comes specifically from someone we've read from the French Enlightenment.
General will?
That's right, general will. And does anybody remember who said the general will?
No, but I'm also being reminded of the American who was rooting for getting representatives over in the Parliament there too, with the second sentence.
Yeah, excellent, right? James Otis, right?
Yeah,
definitely. And general will comes from Jean-Jacques Rousseau in his Social Contract of 1762. And so we could see Rousseau was just so influential with his revolutionary generation. So certainly, a product of many things, all of these, plus a lot of the documents we've read, certainly. Well, if we keep going here, excuse me, excuse me, there were many Americans who felt that they had a great influence in the writing of this Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen. Jefferson was there. He met frequently with Lafayette during the drafting period. He was there as the Minister to France between 1785 and 1789. And so it's important to keep that in mind. But also popularly, most Americans said, well, we've had a hand in this. And so just a couple examples that might be interesting to you to see this connection that the Americans felt, at least at the beginning stages of the French Revolution. Lafayette sent Washington the key to the Bastille prison as a token of gratitude for, as he put it, having taught him what liberty was all about during the American Revolution. Thomas Paine said that the idea that the principles of America opened the Bastille is not to be doubted. At the celebration in Paris of the first anniversary of the storming of the Bastille prison, John Paul Jones from New Hampshire and the American Revolutionary Naval fame, and then Thomas Paine, they carried American flags to symbolize the connection between the two nations. And it was actually very interesting because Jefferson went on to say that because France helped America, that France was more a mother country to the United States than Britain, because Britain hated America, but France supported them in their hour of need. And so there were lots of strong feelings there, especially from Jefferson, as we'll see. Also, Americans during, especially the beginning stages of the French Revolution, they wore tricolored hats with representing liberty, equality, and fraternity, the three great ideals of the French Revolution. They sang French revolutionary songs to celebrate their influence on what was going on across the Atlantic. Also, France reciprocally bestowed honorary French citizenship on 4 Americans, Washington, Paine, Hamilton, and Madison, and the National Assembly declared 3 days of national mourning in France upon the death of Benjamin Franklin in 1790. Well, this is sort of a neat time here. Well, it's interesting, though, because the terror really starts to divide Americans into 2 very passionate and partisan camps, the Federalists and then the Jeffersonian Republicans. And so following the terror of 93-94, we see Federalists like Hamilton ceasing to celebrate their connection to France, saying, wait a minute, we didn't create this. We may have created what was good in it, but we didn't create what came after. So who would like to read this quote by Alexander Hamilton, one of our founding fathers?
I will. Would to heaven that we could discern in the mirror of French affairs the same humanity, the same decorum, the same gravity, the same order, the same dignity, the same solemnity, which distinguished the course of the American Revolution. By 1793, the difference between the revolutions was, quote, no less great than that between liberty and licentiousness.
Yeah, thanks for that. And then let's compare that then, okay, to a Jeffersonian Republican, the greatest of them all, Thomas Jefferson, who said that the French had been awakened by our revolution, that their violence was justified because the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It is its natural manure. Jefferson first wrote that regarding Shays' rebellion in the U.S., and then he quoted it again. Also went on to say, quote, the liberty of the whole earth was dependent on the issue of the contest, meaning the French Revolution. Rather than it should have failed, I would have seen half the earth desolated. Were there but an Adam and an Eve left in every country, and left free, it would be better than it is now, close quote. So certainly you can see a divided opinion about the legacy of America's influence on France. Well, it's interesting. I want to look, and of course we don't have as much time as I would have liked because of some technical difficulties at the start of class, and I do apologize for that. But as we start to look at some of the articles, we'll spend more time on some than others. There's 17 of them. As we read them, I do want us to remember these 3 things here at the bottom. Let's try to, 1, reason what they mean. 2, reason principles behind them, because then at the end we'll talk about gospel principles in connection with this statement here. And then number 3, relate them to yourself and your beliefs about good government. So keep those 3 in mind as we just skim through some of these articles. Okay, so the first one, men are born and remain free and equal in rights. Social distinctions may be founded only upon the general good. What do you think about that?
Yeah, in basic rights, yes, but and in opportunities, yes, free and equal. But I get concerned when people say they're equal in rights. I want to know what rights we're talking about.
Yeah, excellent. I appreciate that perceptive point. Well, you know, it's interesting because they go on to talk about some of those rights that they felt that men needed to be equal in. And keep in mind, they are talking about men here. So number 1, the aim of all, this is Article 2, the aim of all political associations is the preservation of the natural and imprescriptible rights of man, meaning they can't be given. These rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. This is a very interesting set. This isn't just the life, liberty, and property that you usually hear, or life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What do we think about this list?
Yeah, security is way more inclusive than life, and I'm not comfortable with that. And are you saying that this is not, they're not talking about women? They don't use man in the humankind sense?
That's right. As we'll see, these rights were specifically aimed at protecting men because they left out women and slaves as well in many of these protections. And so, yeah, it will be interesting to see how this evolves, which is actually the reason why we're going to read Olympe de Gouges, who writes about women in response to this declaration. So thanks so much for that, Wendy.
I'm so used to thinking man means both of us, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, so security, right? I think that's one that perhaps raises some eyebrows. And why? Why do we think? Maybe Lori, would you like to talk about that one? or anybody else?
To me, this is like the United Nations Charter on Human Rights. They give all these extra rights, like the right to be secure, the right to have shelter and health care and access to the arts. I mean, security can include just about anything.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because the United Nations, in its Charter on Human Rights, actually took this declaration as the key document upon which it based the human rights that it selected.
Well, I'm not surprised, because it sounded very European.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you for that. Well, certainly the sovereignty resides in the nation, as we said before, the people. Well, just for the sake of time, I do want to skip a little bit here. This one is very interesting. You hear this one a lot today. Liberty consists in the freedom to do everything which injures no one else. There's a lot of implications there. Law can only prohibit, so this is a negative version of law. Law can only prohibit such actions as are hurtful to society. Let's see, general will, once again, ideally the common good, the true common good, and here we have that the law must be the same for all, whether it protects or punishes. So all citizens are equal in the eyes of the law, an important part of this declaration. Here we have lots on arrest, punishments, innocent until proven guilty. This one is very interesting. Article 10, no one shall be disquieted on account of his opinions, including his religious views, provided their manifestation does not disturb the public order established by law. What do we think about that one?
Well, it made me think of polygamy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that, Heidi. What else?
Because, yeah, that would be, can you hear me very well? I'm out a lot today, and I'm just wondering if
I feel like you're coming in and out a little bit, but I can hear you most of the time.
Okay.
And
well, as I read this,
response time is really
thinking, well, how does that apply to us as Latter-day Saints?
Mm-hmm.
On me
or
Mr. Gentile?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Just on you, Heidi. Your response time is really delayed. Nobody else's is.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. I think it is interesting, though, if we look at this and you ask yourself the question, wait, well, who decides what disturbing the public order means, right? Of course, it's law, and then it comes down to the question, okay, well, who's really making the law? Are there people really consenting? What about, who's consenting? So yeah, this one can be very interesting in its application. This is a similar sort of, First Amendment type here with free communication, security, the rights of man, military forces. Therefore, and this one is very interesting, because you have military forces and other administrative costs, you need to have taxes that should be equitably distributed among all the citizens in proportion to their means. This was very radical at the time. It's certainly in politics anyway, certainly not in the church, but this is like a tithe. This is, okay, hey, if everybody pays 15%, then you pay 15% whether you make $1 a year or $1 billion a year, which was an interesting part of this document. Well, certainly, we have consent of the governed here through a democratic or Republican system. This one, I think, is very interesting. You can require an account of the administration of public agents. Also, you have to basically define the powers of government so they can never become arbitrary. And then the last one, just talking about how you can't deprive people of rights unless, or taxes, unless it's been decided upon and agreed upon beforehand. Get back to sort of consent of the governed. Well, I'm sorry we had to sort of rush through those today, but if we do look at this, just in the time we have remaining, how do you think this declaration has influenced subsequent statements of political and human rights? And Wendy brought up perhaps the most important one. And when I say important, I mean the one that perhaps had the most influence. Do you see this anywhere else?
What was Wendy's statement? What was Wendy's point? Do you think, Mr. Gentile?
Well, she was just talking about how it influenced the UN Declaration on Human Rights, and how there are lots of rights, quote unquote, that are provided for in that declaration that go far beyond other rights that are stated elsewhere.
Well, you know what? I would say this, and that is, there is a fine line between what people want and what rights or how. Let's say there's a fine line of what determines a right.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the is it the right? Is it and that's why if it's on anything else besides those we find in nature and nature's God, like it's set out in the Declaration of Independence, then it just becomes a war of opinion and who's stronger or who has more influence, which that will define a right.
Yeah.
So. I mean, all these rights. Every one of we were looking at, I was saying, is that a divine right, or is that somebody's good idea?
Yeah, definitely, right? And that gets back to this question of secular natural law. So thank you so much, Brad, for pointing that out. You know, just a quote here about the UN Declaration. Let's see, Lori, would you read this for us, please? Let's see. Lori, are you with us?
Honor can hear.
Let's see, Lori. Okay. Well, would someone else like to read this one for us, please?
I will, and she says that she's having an audio problem. It says, the Declaration of the Rights of Man of 26 August 1789 has proved an enormously influential political text. Its mixture of civil and political rights, individual freedom of speech, assembly, and religious opinion, but also freedom from arbitrary government, has provided the blueprint for modern liberal culture. The Declaration is the key source for the United Nations rights. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was exactly as you thought, Wendy. So I'm glad you pointed that out. You know, of course we talked about women and slaves, but for the sake of time, I do want to spend just our last time talking about something that the most important to really tie this to some gospel principles. You know, as we think about this as a document of secular natural law, which is law that is called natural by philosophers that is not founded on any sort of religious beliefs, universal truth, or divine authority. So certainly there are dangers with a document like this. What do you think about those dangers?
Well, for one thing, they end up saying, like Lori already pointed out, that in Article 3, that sovereignty resides in the nation. If you can't say that God, your Creator, God gave you these rights, then who are you saying that they came from?
Right. Yeah, and then, well, and actually this ties exactly into our next quote. So let's read this one here. And actually, let's see, Walter, would you read the first paragraph, Heidi the second, and Christina the third? And this is President Ezra Taft Benson talking about human rights.
The third important principle pertains to the source of basic human rights. Rights are either God-given as part of the divine plan, or they are granted by government as part of the political plan.
Hello?
Was Christina second?
Heidi was second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. If we accept the premise that human rights are granted by government, then we must be willing to accept the corollary that they can be denied by government. I, for one, shall never accept that premise. We must ever keep in mind the inspired words of Thomas Jefferson as found in the Declaration of Independence.
And Christina, if you could read that one.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
Great, thanks so much for that. So here, right, what's the difference then? Of course, it's pretty obvious, but I think it's important to state it outright. What's the difference then between a document like the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen and what President Benson is talking about?
I would say the dilution of secular rights.
Mm-hmm. So rights that are sort of created by governments, perhaps.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's just rights that are not founded on revelation, but basically.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Brad. Would anybody else like to comment on this? Well, you know, it's certainly very interesting because, as Elder Oaks had pointed out most recently in his talk, Religious Freedom, you know, when these rights are not seen as coming from a divine source, it's very, very easy to brush aside a religious point of view on rights. Here he said, a writer for the Christian Science Monitor predicts that the coming century will be very secular and religiously antagonistic, with intolerance of Christianity rising to levels many of us have not believed possible in our lifetimes. Otherwise, observers have noted the ever-growing, relentless attack on the Christian religion by forces who reject the existence or authority of God. The extent and nature of religious devotion in this nation is changing. The tide of public opinion in favor of religion is receding, and this probably portends public pressures for laws that will impinge on religious freedom. He goes on by saying such forces in society, atheists and others, would intimidate persons with religious-based points of view from influencing or making the laws of their state or nation. Noted author and legal commentator Hugh Hewitt described the current circumstance this way. There is a growing anti-religious bigotry in the United States. For 3 decades, people of faith have watched a systematic and very effective effort waged in the courts and the media to drive them from the public square and to delegitimize their participation in politics as somehow threatening. And so what do we think about this then as we wrap up, and how perhaps it connects to this great influence that the Declaration of the Rights of Man has had on subsequent declarations of quote-unquote rights?
Well, I think this is kind of an unforeseeable, I don't know, I can't see myself being in France and having foreseen that if you take God out of the equation, that what like Ezra Benson says, that if God isn't the one who that if government grants you your rights, then government can just as easily take them away. I don't think they foresaw that.
Yeah, excellent, and thank you for that. I do appreciate that. Any other comments?
Well, along that whole line of foreseeing, I don't think people see the effect taking God out of their life has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, right? I mean, the scripture comes to my mind again and again and again when I hear people, you know, go ahead, Heidi.
Well, I was just going to say it can happen so gradually that you don't see what's going to happen, and I think that is one of Satan's biggest tools. It's very gradual, and then you just think people are being extreme if they say what can happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks so much for that, and I think it's so important to remember, you know, to be learned is good. What? If they hearken unto the counsels of God. And I just think it's so important, and, you know, I'm grateful that we can discuss politics and the history of documents like this declaration, you know, in the light of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, where, you know, we do believe in universal truth, where we do believe in the authority of God, where we do believe in divine assistance and inspiration in the creation of nations, and, you know, specifically in our own lives. And I'm grateful that we do have a standard by which to judge, because as we have seen through history, you know, when people don't, then they create their own standard, and that standard then leads them very far off the path to true happiness. Anyway, I'm grateful for our discussions today. Once again, I do apologize about the technical difficulties at the beginning of class, and I look forward to our class on Wednesday. So thank you all so much, and have a great day.